where they want to be, we'll kick this off. I don't know if you noticed, but what we were watching before was a video of our last meeting. So we had taped it, and that's posted on YouTube. So that's what we were watching. And today we're going to try it again. Kevin and Dave are going to be recording this meeting, and they'll post it on YouTube. So you'll get a chance to see it, and those that aren't here will get a chance to see it. And if this keeps working, we may do this. We'll become famous, maybe. The last meeting before this morning, 80 people had viewed that. No, there were 80 views on that. Of course, I viewed it 5 times. Kevin viewed it 10 times. So I don't know how many individuals were, but maybe it'll catch on. Are there any members here that are brand new and they're coming to their first meeting? So none of us, whoa, none of us would recognize them. Let's hear. Who raised their hand here? Please.
I'm Steve Gross. I actually came to a meeting about 2 or 3 years ago and got lost, and it took me a while to find my way. Glad to be here.
Are you a woodworker?
I am.
All right.
You joined today.
You what? Joined today? That's pretty new. Okay, I saw some more hands. Yes, sir. And your name?
Ben Pappas.
Okay.
I came with Steve and Steve.
Steve and Steve.
I am a woodworker.
All righty. All right. Steve, you're going to be presenting later this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He's also a wood carver. You should
And a
see some
wood
of the stuff
carver.
he does.
You're going to have a lot of
Outstanding stuff.
opportunities you will have to show us your work.
Okay.
I saw another hand.
Yeah.
Your name?
Barry Doherty. I came with Rich, Steve here, first time. I'm kind of apprenticing underneath him. I'm novice of novices, so
Okay.
just cut my teeth.
He's got good apprentices, good masters to work with there.
What do you like to make? Really haven't gotten into a lot of stuff yet. We've been doing some structural work at some gift shops in our area. Furniture. Wonderful.
Any other new members? I mean, that's great to have that many. How about any guests just coming to take a look? All righty. Well, good. Thank you, the new members, for joining. By the way, in the last 2 weeks, 6 new members have joined. I don't know if maybe you're amongst those, so the word must be getting out.
They must have caught it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on the YouTube. Our next monthly meeting is next February 9th, second Tuesday of the month, and Rockler Novi is going to be here again. They were here once before, and they bring products, do demonstrations. They maybe become a regular once a year showing here. Also, you could go to our website and see the list of all our programs for this year. Everything is booked out, and on our website they're all listed. Plus, those of you that are new, if you wonder how will you remember the meetings, our newsletter lists them out as well, and I send out a couple notices during the month as reminders to everybody, so you'll be apprised of what's going on. Right about this time, normally we would talk about tool safety, and I would show a safety video. Well, this week I spent about an hour going through YouTube safety videos, and I said, we've pretty much seen all the good ones, and there's a lot of crappy ones out there that I wouldn't even want to show you. So I think we're done with YouTube safety videos for a while anyway. I thought we might do something different instead of that, maybe starting next meeting, having a Q&A session. Come in with a question you want to ask, because there is a ton of woodworking expertise out here. And if it's not something that you have to get an answer on immediately, you could bring a question to a meeting and ask it, and we can spend 5 or 10 minutes or more, giving you lots of different answers to your questions. That's probably how it would work. So that's how we're going to do that for a while instead of the safety video. And I hope you all bought your raffle tickets, because now we're going to ask Ed to come up with your tickets, Ed, and we'll do the door prizes before we start into our feature presentation. Dave, there are a couple announcements to be made, that's right. Dave.
First off, for everybody who's renewed your membership, thank you very much. We really, really appreciate it. Jerry Schmidt, you...
Here.
Jerry? Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for filling this out. Guys, thank you very much for filling these out.
What is that?
Oh, these are the forms. These are the membership applications, but they're also the renewal forms.
Oh.
And what we do with these forms, I know they're kind of involved and extensive, but what we do with these forms, we try and keep track of people's interests so we can tailor some of these meetings to the interests that people have. So that's why we ask you to do that. You can also fill these in. I'm using that stupid thing called a computer on the website. Thanks, guys, and thank you for paying. We appreciate it very much.
And Ron, you wanted to say something about the toys?
Sure. We should have some toy parts available, and kind of give you an idea on the table of what we have available. It's also listed in the newsletter every month, what sizes. We also have some items that were volunteered to us that are different sizes, so that's listed in the newsletter as well. Dan always puts that in. So feel free to take a look. Also, if anyone's interested in any apparel, I happen to have one hat that's for sale, but we have 4 different kinds of shirts. So if you're interested, come see me. Thank you.
Ron's wearing one of the shirts, I'm wearing one. I think I saw more out here. Dan's wearing one. So Berg is, so lots of shirts, different colors, you can get your name on. There's Frank, a relatively new member, he's got a beautiful new shirt on.
Wear a tie with this
You could wear a tie.
and run the lathe,
Okay, so yes, and if you're going to no, you can't go to the website to see the apparel page yet, because that's not set up, but that's one of the plans, right, to have our apparel page on the website.
Is that my authorization?
No, I think that's one of the plans, so. Anyway, so otherwise you come here. But another thing that we do offer for you is name tags. We have gotten a lot of new members lately, and I can't remember names, so I'm looking at most of you, and I don't know your names. I may have seen your faces. But here's the name tags. It's got a magnetic thing. I'm wearing one. We charge $5,
but they cost $12 to mix, so you get a deal.
They cost $12. We sell them for $5. Sign up with Ed. Ed's taking the names. I know he had a bunch here to pass out today. So if you give Ed your name, maybe by next meeting, maybe.
Also, when you get the raffle, if you wear your name tag, you get 2 tickets for $1, okay? And if you don't wear your name tag, it costs you $10.
Yes.
Jerry, can I say one thing?
Absolutely.
Talking about the toys, I don't know how many of you read the newsletter or not, but Ron and I delivered the toys to Children's Hospital first part of December, and I believe the totals were 478 toys and about 20 boxes. So, those of you that contributed, thank you, and thank you.
And some of the folks made a couple hundred toys, and some of them made, bunches of boxes. So, and I'm looking at Bill. Bill's a perennial, a couple hundred, but you don't need to make 200 to make a contribution. But Bill goes above and beyond. But many others made some beautiful toys. And if you go to the website, there's posted a lot of pictures of the toys. Dan's our resident photographer lately, and he's taken some really nice pictures of all the toys, and kind of blow your mind. They're not just little pine wood derby cars. They're pretty fancy cars. And Berg, yours are going out of the atmosphere, the stuff that you're putting together now. So a lot of great toys. Okay, let's now,
Tell them what we got.
we got four items here.
Digital angle finder.
Digital angle finder. A thin board jig cutter. If you're a shopper of woodpecker, you can get one of these that's red for like, it's over $200, I think.
$800.
It's a couple $100.
Oh, yeah, at least.
Some of us have gotten one that's red, but it's not woodpecker, for like $30. And
That comes from Harbor Freight.
Ed's got one from Harbor Freight, but it is just like it. So, and I've used this, and it's amazing. And a couple items from Rockler for helping glue ups. So there's 4. We're going to pull a name. We're going to pull a number. If it's your number, come up and first come, first serve. So we'll be pulling 4 tickets. I had a wish list for my wife for Christmas for me from Rockler. And she got what I had on my wish list, but she punched a couple extra things that she didn't intend to punch.
So I'm not
these came.
responsible for those.
So Ed didn't buy these, but they came from my Christmas stocking. So you get to grab whatever you want.
One to a customer.
The next number is one relatively new member also, right? Yes.
So anything on this table?
Oh, I said, no.
You were in the member, yeah.
One. I'm actually needed this.
That is good.
This is.
Last prize. No choice this time. That's all right. Okay. All right, folks. So that's all I had planned. Any questions? Anybody want to just ask something, anything before we get started? Yes.
Maybe this was covered someplace. What happens to these meetings with the new center?
Good question. They will be going to the news center. We don't know when the news center opens exactly, but they think it might be toward the end of this year. It's somewhere very close to this. And that's all we know at this point. But we're part of it. We're welcome to use it. They will have a room like this. That's all we know at this point. Yes, Jim.
Don't forget what's in your pocket.
Thank you. Oh, here it is, right. Early in the meeting, I was standing there and I felt something go into my pocket. And this shows up. Jim brought it. This is a serving spoon left at our August picnic. It says Diane McCall. Is there a Mr. McCall here? Ken, I think, where's Ken Wolf? Ken, you still have some stuff left over from the picnic, right? A couple times you would bring it, nobody picked them up.
You want to add it to the collection?
Yes, I want to add it to the collection.
Lost and found.
That's what I want. Okay,
In
thank
my
you.
glove box all the time.
Does that work, Jim?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Anything else? All right. Okay. What we have today, some of you have seen already, is a presentation on antique tools. Cliff Duran has been a member of the Guild for, I don't know, did you say 30 years, Cliff? Maybe.
Since about 1985.
85, okay. He admittedly doesn't come to regular meetings, but this is your 4th presentation to the guild?
Yes.
Okay. And he tells me he faithfully reads every newsletter that comes out. So, how's that? So even if he can't make it. But Cliff has been a collector of many things, he's informed me. I rode out here with Cliff today because he lives a few minutes from me up in Rochester Hills. And so we came out together and I got some of his story. But I know he has a little biography that he'll give us. So, Cliff, I'm ready to turn it over to you.
I was looking over the audience here and I'm thinking, they're not going to be impressed with Antique Tools because they're going to say, I bought this at the hardware store like 35 years ago. And on the note about name tags, make sure you do that. I don't have mine with me. But it's like one Shriner said to the other, the name's familiar, but I just can't place the fez. So anyhow, my name's Cliff Duran. I have been a member of the Guild since probably about 1980. The only guy, well, the first guy I met, where is he? Ed, where are you at? Back here. Okay. Ed Stuckey was the first guy I met, along with Stu Falls. I don't know if anybody knows him or not. Stu's probably been gone probably 20 years now, I'm sure. And I'm familiar with a few of the other older guys in the organization. It's a great place to learn woodworking. It's a neat thing to do. Myself personally, I taught woodworking, cabinet making, and millwork vocationally for Chippewa Valley School District. I did that for 32 years. Started out at Chippewa Valley High School. That was for the first 20, and then the last 12 I finished it up at Dakota High School, which is up 21 Mile and Hydroid, out on the east side of Macomb County. And a couple of years ago, Dakota became the largest high school in the state of Michigan as far as student enrollment. So a big place. I think the first time that I did a presentation for the Guild, I did that at our old shop at Chippewa Valley High School. And that was, I taught a presentation on a wood shaper. And I've done one on wood finishing. And this will be my second one on antique tools. So, I do live in Rochester Hills. The house that we live in is a copy of a Victorian French cottage. And I was the builder. And still working on it. Anybody that likes to paint is welcome to come over. When you got 5 different colors around a window, it gets to be pretty intense up there. And been married to my wife, Patty, who is the gym teacher at Chippewa Valley. And we just celebrated our 50th anniversary in December.
Congratulations.
It's too bad she's not here to get the applause, because she's the one that deserves it. Yeah. We had 3 kids. They're all, I think the youngest one is 40 now. And they've all done very well. So happy to have those kids. It was a privilege to have them. At any rate, we're going to go through some of these antique tools today, but one of the things that I wanted to bring up, one of the things that I was involved with while I was teaching school, I was also the chairman for the Rules Committee for the Michigan Industrial Technology and Education Society, Some of you have been judges for them at their craftsman's competition that we have around the state every year. I also served as convention chairman, and I did my term as president-elect and president of the organization also. Being president of something, just a tip of the hat to Jerry, being president of an organization, and a good organization like this, is not only a privilege, but it's also something that's very fulfilling. I found that out being a president of MITES. So when elections come up, if he's looking for a way out, I would suggest that you jump in on one of the organization membership board, because it is a good thing to do. Why do I collect old tools? I don't know. I guess it's better than going to the bar and just blowing your money there. But I've been a collector all my life. Dinky toys when I was a kid. I still collect military. I got into old tools when I started going to school down at Wayne State, and I got into the industrial arts program down there. I got talking to a few of the professors down there. One of them happened to be a tool collector. His name was Fred Curry. Fred was actually a salesman for Stanley Tools in his former career. And Fred had an amazing collection of Stanley tools. In fact, I have one tool that's probably one of my favorites. Used to be in his collection, and I'll show that to you today. But some of the reasons that I came up with as far as collecting old tools were, well, number one, I guess I figured that it would be for historical significance. The other would be maybe craftsmanship and quality. And then scarcity and age should come in as number three. And of course there's an aesthetic appeal for it too. And sometimes it can be a little bit emotional. Now I don't mean that you're going to break down in tears when you find something, but there's just something inside you that goes, yeah, I remember that. My grandfather had one of those, and that, I always thought it was pretty neat. I never got it, but here's my chance to pick one up. There is an investment potential, at least that's what I tell my wife. The last one I would say is do your research. Better? More better? More better. See, they were just humoring me. They never even heard a word I said. So let's take a look at each one of those first. Because Jerry told me I had an hour to get. So we'll do this right up. So for a historical and cultural significance, what better way to connect yourself with something that was built a century or two before you were even born would be to hold in your hands an artifact of that time. So for me, an antique tool becomes that artifact. I get to see how these people thought about manufacturing a tool. Most of the things that you see up here on this table, you'd go, wow, that's really cool looking. And it kind of reflects the time in which it was built. As far as craftsmanship goes, well, it goes without saying. You look at any of these tools up here, and you go, gee, everything is cleaned up, nicely painted. And I'll tell you something too, and this kind of goes with the investment part of it. but for myself, I like things that look good. A lot of people will collect antique tools, and the more dirt and grime that it has on it, the better it is for them. I'm not your guy. I look for stuff that's been maybe used once and put on a shelf. And that's where I find the value. Plus the fact that it's probably the closest it's been to what it was originally 100 years ago. Because nobody's repainted it, nobody's sandblasted it, nobody's polished it. It's just the way it was when the person who owned it before I did got it brand new. Scarcity and age. Most of this equipment that's up here is 100 or well over 100 years old, except for the stuff with the cords down here at the end. That's a little newer, but it was probably, it was all up and running long before any of us were born. So age has something to do with it. Scarcity, a lot of antique tools are rare because they were a failure. People bought them, they didn't do what they said it would do. It just didn't have the market for it. The company that manufactured it said, hey, we're not selling these things. Deep Six it. Well, it ran for maybe a year and a half production, gone. Now it makes it rare. But rare doesn't always mean that it's valuable. Some rare things are basically worthless, or what you can get for them. Investment potential, I kind of look at it, this is a way to, if I want to spend my time and my money on this, I enjoy it. I like to look at it, I like to appreciate it, I like to show it to other people, and I don't really worry about whether or not I'm going to, cash in on this, because most people, don't ever cash in on it, because they die and the kids sell them off at a garage sale. I've told my kids, I said, you can do what you want, but I said, I would suggest you go find a good auctioneer and get rid of it that way, or if you want to keep it, that's fine. But I don't look at it as anything that I'm going to make tons of money on in the future, because unless I suffer a really debilitating illness, I'm going to appreciate this stuff till I'm gone. And then it's my kid's problem after that. Okay, so how did my collection begin? Well, my collection started with one little block plane. And it was because I had gone with a friend of mine who was also a woodworker over to a guy's house in Warren to look at a joiner. And he was going to buy this joiner and use it at his own shop. Well, while we were there, the guy was sorting through stuff in his shop, and he had an old dresser there, and he pulled a drawer out. I saw this block plane sitting there, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I said, you want to sell that? And he goes, yeah. He said, I don't use it, so yeah. What do you give me for it? I said, I don't know, a couple of bucks. He said, fine, take it. That started the whole thing right there. So $2 can get you in a lot of trouble. So that was my first antique tool that I bought. I had no idea who made it. I had no idea of what the value was. I had no idea at all what I was going to do with this, except I thought it was kind of cool. So I can give you this bit of advice. If you decide that you want to collect antique tools, please don't mirror what I did, okay? The first thing you ought to do is go out and buy a book on antique tools. There's a lot of them out there. I left a few down here on the table just for you to look at. Some of them are just really beautiful books. The photography in them is just wonderful, and to appreciate the artistry that's been put into some of these tools, it's just amazing. You might want to decide to collect one thing. That will alleviate the problem of having to build a pole barn on a property. Because if you just stick to one thing, it's a lot easier to specialize. It's a little bit more difficult to find what you're looking for because you're only looking for one thing. But it'll kind of keep a cap on the amount of stuff that you own. In packing up for this presentation, I spent all day yesterday just packing this stuff. I spent the day before that going through and took half of what I brought here, was getting it out and deciding what I wanted to take. The day before that was the other half, and the 3 days before that was on the internet looking up stuff because I thought, they're going to ask me about this and I have no idea what this is. So, you know, and I could tell you an answer, but I like to make stuff up too, so just be aware. You can specialize in a lot of different areas. You can specialize in just screwdrivers. You can specialize in claw hammers. I didn't bring it with me because honestly I didn't know where it was, but I have one double claw hammer. Are you all familiar with double claw hammers? Okay, I don't know. Most of this stuff came about at the beginning and during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And there was always somebody out there that was looking to build something better. And one of the things that they came up with, and there's probably 30 different examples of double claw hammers, is a hammer that has two sets of claws on it. It'll have one set up here, and it'll have a second set, almost like a dew claw on an animal, down below it, so that when you roll that hammer to pull a nail out, you use the first set of claws for it. Well, after a certain point, you run out of room to pull the entire nail out. So you go down to the second claw, hook that onto the nail, and pull it out completely. It came in real good for nails that were used for forms, because that's a two-headed nail, so I'm sure you've seen them. And so what's the chances of you being able to assemble 30 double claw hammers? Well, it could probably take you a lifetime to do it. Planes, and I'm not talking about the flying type, I'm talking about the type that's smooth wood. That's a big option right there, because hand planes, you can collect just the wood planes, and that could be just the smoothing planes, or you can collect the planes that do a specific job, like a molding plane. Where do I have that at? Okay. This would be like a molding plane here. This is what they call a complex molder. Now they manufactured all of these with different profiles underneath, and then the cutting iron was also ground to match that. A lot of these came out of mom and pop shops. They were not big companies like Stanley Tool. We're talking about individual people that manufactured these. Uh, There's hundreds of these. You can imagine, back when they built a house like I built, most of the stuff that I did that was ornamental was done on a shaper or with a router. If I had to build that same house today with these planes, I wouldn't be here because I'd be busy at home still building the house. It would take a team of carpenters, and we're talking probably at least 10, about 2 to 3 years to completely finish a Victorian house using these wooden hand planes. So it was a good thing that labor was cheap back then, because it takes a long time to run a piece of molding with one of these hand planes. You also have planes that are used for a specific purpose. This is a plow plane, which basically just cuts either a groove or a rabbet in a piece of wood. And that's all it does. It has a fence on it so it holds the cutter head straight. And it's also adjustable so that if you decide that you want to move that rabbet or groove in or out, you can adjust the side of the fence here and do that. It has a depth stop on it also right here. And you can set that up so that it'll stop it when you hit the spot that you want to be at. Another type of plane would be maybe you want to do just transitional planes. Now, this is what they call a transitional plane, and basically what it does, it's a smoothing plane, okay? This would be equivalent to like a Stanley number 4. This is built by Stanley, and if you look at it, you see that the sole of this plane is wood, handles are wood, but the cutter and the frame that surrounds that is metal. So at some point during the manufacture of planes, Stanley was moving over from wood planes to a combination of wood and metal, and then eventually they went to all metal. This particular plane has a Liberty Bell cast onto the frog here, and that Liberty Bell says 76 on it. So any guesses as to what's going on here? What do you think?
1976?
There you go, of,
The Declaration.
yes, okay. So back in 1976, we did the 200 year. Stanley did this for the 100 year. So that's what this particular plane represents. It's amazing that something that old, that's a tool that you use, can be in that kind of condition. That's all original paint on here. Yes, Reagan?
Cliff, what kind of wood did they prefer for the sole?
They used either beech or apple wood was the preferred wood for that. Now, some of the planes, if you get into a plow plane like this is a pretty common one, but I have one at home that's made out of rosewood. So they did have, you could have the standard model, you could have the next one up. We'll give you the one with the heated seats in it, that sort of thing. So, I mean, they did have those choices. A lot of these planes, like a plow like this, I don't own one because they're really expensive, is the Ohio center wheel plow plane. And that one came with ivory tips and German silver accoutrements on there if it was metal. And they were basically given out not as a working plane, but it would be like if somebody that was in your woodworking shop retired from there and they wanted to give them something that in memory of their service, that's what they got. Usually they were never used, and you can find them out there, but they're not cheap. I started going through the history of Stanley Tools, because I thought, oh, I'd like to lay some stuff on and make them think I really know what I'm talking about. And I got into the Stanley company history, and it is so complicated. It kind of looks like the company family tree was struck by lightning. It is just all over the place, mainly because all the guys that were president or chairman of the board, their last name was Stanley. So you got Augustus Stanley, you have Frederick Stanley, you have Stanley. And not only that, but I'm sure that you've seen on a lot of hand planes where the name Bailey appears. And that was Leonard Bailey, but there was also a couple of other Baileys that own companies that Stanley bought that are involved with this, and to sort all of that out becomes a real problem. And it's confusing, so I said, you know what, I'm just going to say Stanley Tools started in 1831, and they're still in business today. One of the oldest companies around. However, it is now Stanley Black & Decker. And that's another whole story in itself, because Black & Decker started out as Alonzo Decker, and I forget his first name, but the other guy's last name was Black. And they've been absorbed and moved around so many times that the original Black & Decker is not the Black & Decker that you know today. Okay, let's go on. How about something simple like wrenches? There are wrench collectors out there with hundreds of wrenches. I don't have a lot, because wrenches don't interest me all that much. I mean, okay, turns a bolt, that's nice. And they're pretty simple. However, some wrenches are worth a lot more than others. I don't know if the camera can catch that or not, but can you see the name on that?
Winchester.
Winchester. I don't know what caliber this wrench is, but Winchester made tools from 1919 to 1929. And in my research on a lot of these tool companies that came and went, 1929 seems to be a date where a lot of these companies stopped production. What happened in 1929? Yeah, the Great Depression, stock market crash, everything went to hell in a handbasket. That was the demise of a lot of these companies. Winchester was obviously a gun manufacturer, and they made a lot of their money during the First World War. They produced bayonets, they produced rifles, they produced ammunition. They were in their glory. I mean, they made a ton of money off the First World War. After the First World War ended, it was like they had their own crash right there. It's like, okay, well, we got enough rifles. We got a lot of ammunition left over. What are we going to do? Because we're not selling too many guns at this point. So they decided, you know what? We got the machinery to do this. We could manufacture tools. So they went into business doing not only tools, but they made flashlights, they made roller skates, they made saws, they made planes. Anything that came out of a hardware store, Winchester made it. But they only lasted from 1919 to 1929. So a lot of their stuff is pretty rare. This is the only piece of Winchester I own, and I think I found this just by accident. It was in a box full of old wrenches. Picked it up, looked at it, and said, oh, Winchester, I think I'll keep that one. So that's how that came about. Another thing you can collect is just blacksmith-made tools. Now, tools made by blacksmith were pretty common early on, because that was the way you got a tool done. You'd go to the local blacksmith and said, hey, you know what, I need a chisel or a screwdriver, can you make one up for me? They say, sure, we'll do that. I have a few things here that represent the blacksmith-made type tools. This is one of them. It's a really nice pair of dividers. It's got a little mark, a little punch mark, right up here on the top. Got it?
No. I see punches there.
Yeah. Can I do this?
That helps a lot.
Okay. But if you look closely at this pair of dividers, you'll actually see the hammer marks up and down the arms of this divider. And it just amazes me, the precision cutting the slots in here. And it moves so nicely. It's just really a nice tool to have. I mean, after all of these years, it's still tight and does a really nice job. That's a blacksmith-made tool. They used to make builder squares. Was another favorite of the blacksmith, and I didn't bring it because it was at the bottom of the toolbox and there was like 3 dozen planes over the top of it, and I didn't feel like digging it out. But I do have a blacksmith-made square, and all the measurements are hand-stamped, the numbers are hand-stamped, and if you look at where the two blades were joined, it's all hand-hammered, welded on there. And it's just amazing because it's really pretty square.
Cliff, do you have any idea how old the dividers are?
No. It's a good question, because that brings up another point in tool collecting. If you collect tools that are manufactured by a company, okay, like Miller's Falls or Stanley or Union Tool, you can pretty much guess, come very close to the age of it by what improvements come with that tool. I started looking up, this for example, it's a distance saw. It's their number 2 model. It's a panel saw crosscut, 10 teeth per inch. I can specifically date this saw between 1879 and 1917. Now, I can't tell you exact date on it. Actually, this saw belonged to my grandfather. It was one of the few things that I got out of his workbench in his garage after he passed away. And if you look to date this saw, you have to go right here to that center seal that appears on all distance saws. Got that, Dave?
Does that say the date, or just?
No, it does not. But in researching this, which I did yesterday, I just put in history of distance saws on the internet. The internet is a marvelous invention.
Distance?
Diston, D-I-S-S-T-O-N.
That's a brand.
That's a brand. Okay?
Thank you.
And in their archive, they showed me, I want to guess, maybe better than 30 of these little buttons that have their company logo on it. Every one of them is different. So the early ones had an eagle on it. The later ones show the keystone, because they're made in Philadelphia. And this one comes up 1879 to 1917. And how do I know that that's accurate? Well, number one, they got all the pictures and they've done the research. So I'm going to take their word for it that that's the date span for that saw. Besides the fact that I know that my grandfather got married to my grandmother in 1912. And I'm guessing that when he was single, he wasn't picking up saws because he worked in a bank. So when they bought their house, I'm sure that he said, hey, I need some stuff to fix things around here. So that's when he bought that saw. So I'm figuring, well, if they were married in 1912, 1917, the end date for that particular emblem, it fits. The other interesting thing about this saw is that all the distance saws before the Second World War had this little nib. Who's got hand saws at home? Okay. Any of you have a saw that's got this little nib on the front of it? You do, okay. You know what it's for?
Oh, there's a lot of theories.
Yeah, there is. One theory is that you turn this upside down, put it over the edge of the board and pull back on it, and it was enough just to nick the edge of the board so that you could start your cut. Another theory was that if you made a deep cut and you were building up sawdust, that you could take this, tip it upside down, drag it through that cut, and it would pull the sawdust out. Another one was that it was a good place to put a pencil, stick a pencil in here, and then use your index finger, and you could set up a distance on the edge of a board, pull the saw down straight, and put a parallel line along the edge of a board. Something similar to like what you do with a combination square. I know a lot of people have learned that little trick, where you set up a combination square, put a pencil at the end of it, and drag the square all the way down. None of those are true. See, I told you, I make stuff up. So. No, but that's what I found in looking into that little nib, is that it really has no purpose at all. It was there as a marketing tool. It was just put in there as a little decoration, and people would look at it, yeah, you know what, that's kind of cool. I like that. I don't know what it's for, but I like the saw, I'll buy it. So as best as they can figure, it was set up for marketing only. It had no purpose at all. And there's a few things on this table, same thing. Okay, we're going to get to those in a little bit. But see, this is one of those things that fulfills my emotional value. Belonged to my grandfather. And when I had it upstairs yesterday, I said to Patty, I said, you know, she said, that's really kind of a neat old saw. And I said, yeah, I said, it belonged to my grandfather. She said, does your son know that? And I go, I doubt it. She said, you ought to put a piece of tape or a label or something on it so that, you know, when you're gone. I said, I'm going someplace? She said, yeah, eventually. She said, you know, nobody gets out of here alive. That your son will know that that's his great-grandfather's saw. Well, actually, it'd be his great-great-grandfather's saw.
Smart lady.
Yeah, she is. So, you got that on tape?
Yes.
I said she's smart, right? Okay, good. Just getting back to the blacksmith-made tools. I put these up here, and you guys are going to go, what the hell is he putting nails on them? These are blacksmith-made nails. Anybody here watch The Curse of Oak Island? One guy?
Yeah, they find it right there.
Yeah. Okay. You're my hero, Ed. I watch it too. In their search for buried treasure, every once in a while they come up with an old nail or something like that, and they call it a rose head. And that's what these are, is the heads on these are shaped almost like the top of a rose, just before it opens up completely. And these are blacksmith-made nails, which would probably date these to probably late 1700s. Now, I didn't find these at any treasure site. I think I got these, both of these came from an old barn that they were taking down, and I decided, well, those are kind of cool. I'm going to grab a couple of those. Again, blacksmith made. Can you imagine? You go into a hardware store back then, but probably didn't even have hardware stores. I know Ace wasn't in business then. And ordering a pound of nails, you know, and we'll have them for you in a week. So, a lot of things to be said about blacksmith type tools. Going into tools made in the shop. We're in the Detroit area here, and I was talking back there at the table, and one of our conversations touched on the point. I said, I remember driving down 10 Mile Road with my dad, and either side of 10 Mile Road for miles were tool and die shops. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these guys made their own tools. Being in the automobile industry, pattern making was a big deal around the Detroit area. And a lot of these pattern makers, probably on their lunchtime, maybe could be 100% on company time, would make some of their own tools. It was just cheaper for them. They had the knowledge to do it, plus the fact that they had all the materials and the wherewithal to build that right there in the shop. I've got a couple. This screwdriver, I don't know if anybody picked it up and noticed it, but if you look on the edge of it, right there, you'll see little grooves that are left over from when this used to be a file. Got it, okay. But then you look at it and you go, I can appreciate the craftsmanship on this. It's like, why do you have to do all of that? Well, because it looked nice, number one. Number two, it got you down to a size that fit the screw you needed too. You just didn't grind it straight, you had to put a nice curve in it like that. Put a handle on it, ferrule is brass, makes a nice screwdriver. Apparently he did a good job because it's still here. Another thing that I see a lot in Detroit are spoke shaves. Pattern makers use these to put, accent marks for finger wells, that sort of thing, along the side of the door. They maybe have a molding on there that required the use of a spoke shave to build it. This spoke shave is solid brass. The cutters are unmarked, because he probably made the cutters, and they cast the brass right there at the company and made spoke shaves that, for all practical purposes, are just as nice looking and probably better built than what you could buy at the time. I can't tell you how many company toolboxes that I've bought over the years, and there could be half dozen of these. in the toolbox?
I was a pattern maker down the road. We made our own smoke shades.
Yeah,
We used to
okay.
send the patterns off to the foundry, bring it back, have a machine, used to make our own blades, made our own chisels, made a lot of different tools. But when I was in business.
You really are old, aren't you?
We're puzzling about that one. What do you think that was used for? Was it like for a Cooper, for shaving the top of a barrel or something, or a wheel? That particular one, you just had a brass one.
No, I have, you're talking of, yeah, there's a particular type of a plane. It looks very much like a cross between a spoke shave and a draw knife. It's called a Cooper's Howl, and it's used for where the barrel lid fits into the groove along the edge of the barrel, and they taper that down so it fits into that groove. That's what they use that plane for. You could, a spoke shave would do it, but it'd take you a while.
So the one you just had though, you couldn't figure out how they would use it, or what they would use it on, because the handle seems like to be in the wrong place. Do you have any idea what that one's for?
Yes, I know what it's used for. But it was, when you're pattern making, you make a pattern, then you make a core boxes, okay? Core boxes are the inside of a pattern, like an engine, you know, you make from sand. In order to get into the core box, which is in like a negative shape, okay? Because the pattern is a positive shape, you want to look at it that way. The tools were made specifically for core boxes. Just like you see a crankshaft, a crank neck chisel, okay? Rather than just a straight chisel. I don't mean to take all your time for it. It was used for getting into core boxes so you wouldn't hit your knuckles. That's what it was used for. Specifically for pattern making, okay?
That one, the handles are here, the blades are like on the sides.
Yeah, well, it depends what you run. You're core box doing inside work. Okay? Okay, good.
Okay. Did you make that up?
Okay, law.
Yeah. Jerry, how much time do I have?
Well, we need to be wrapping up at 4, but you do not need to go that far. We got plenty of time.
Okay, good. Because I got a few more things I'd like to show.
Sure.
Okay. Another thing you can collect, and this gets into the bigger stuff, and I've just kind of skimmed the surface on that, is you can collect something a little bit newer, and that would be the electric power tools. And there's also people that collect, I want to say vintage, but a lot of that is getting up to the 100-year mark, and that's stationary power tools. If you go on the internet and just Google antique power tools, you're going to find some YouTube videos on there that are just amazing. I saw one, this was probably a year ago, where the guy had a 36-inch joiner. Now, if that doesn't put the fear of God into you, when you walk up to something like that that's spinning in your face, I don't know what would. And these joiners at that time had no safety cover for that. So you flip this thing on and you drop a 36-inch board down on that and surface the one side of it. You better have all your ducks in a row when you do it. Amazing to watch, but something I would not, count me out on that. I'll maybe watch you do it, but I don't want to do it. So vintage power tools is another one. Scroll saws is a popular one because the scroll saws are fairly small. They're usually cast iron, but they're, compared to the rest of the stuff, which is tonnage, they're a lot lighter weight and they can be moved around quite a bit. Rulers is another thing that people specialize in. What I have over here are some, most of them are Stanley, and they're made out of boxwood. That seemed to be the wood of choice for a ruler. And then they're trimmed in brass. Now, you're not going to find something like that at the store today. I'm sorry to tell you, but you're just not going to see it. One of the neat things and I'll tell you something about this. This one here, I guess you could figure since it's in a case, it's got to be something special. And it is kind of special in a way. This is manufactured by Stanley. And what it's called is a gentleman's rule. It's made out of elephant ivory and nickel silver. Well, it's not very politically correct nowadays. People go elephant ivory. Are you a killer? And anything that's 100 years old is okay to own. All right? If you own something less than 100 years old, you have to have a clearance from Department of Natural Resources to own it now. So, and the cool thing about this rule is I bought it at a gun show. I've found a lot of different things at shows like that. Antique show, yeah, you would expect it because there's going to be some people there that specialize in tools. And they're going to know what it's worth, too. That's the bad thing about the internet. Because everybody can go in there, type it in, and they'll find out exactly what they can get for it. Or what they think they can get for it anyway. But it's a really nice ruler. I'm not going to drag it out of the box because elephant ivory, as old as it gets, it's not a very stable thing. Very pretty, but it's pretty fragile. So I'm just going to leave it in the box. One of the other things that I mentioned was something as simple as a screwdriver. Now, these two screwdrivers, even though they're just a screwdriver, are a couple of my most favorite things. You would think, oh wow, these are some pretty nice looking planes up here. Yes, sir.
How did you date the elephant ivory ruler?
Stanley only made that for about 4 years. They didn't get a lot of sales on them because they were pretty expensive. And basically that was set up as kind of like, hey, you're retiring, look who we bought you, an elephant ivory ruler. And they, yeah, okay, thanks. And it would go into a dresser drawer and that'd be the end of it. So, and I can't tell you the exact dates. I can make something up, like I said, but it's, yeah, they only made them for a few years. I do own an 1885 Stanley catalog, a real, not a reprint, a real one. And it is in there. But, so I can tell you, well, that's exactly 1885. These two screwdrivers that I have are what they call a perfect handle. And that was a patented design for this kind of a oblong egg-shaped handle that really does fit well in your hand. I also learned that the bigger the screwdriver is, the more valuable it is. Well, that's a pretty wide bit on that screwdriver. The cool thing about this screwdriver, though, is that it says Ford on the side of it, stamped here along the side of the blade. And it's in the Ford script. Let's see if we get that.
Wait a minute.
Okay. I'm guessing that whoever had the screwdriver worked at Ford. And it went home in his pocket or his lunchbox one day and never made it back to the Ford plant. Ford manufactured tools for their cars, like the Model T and the Model A, all came with a tool kit for it. But they were different tools. They weren't this nice. They were pretty much, run-of-the-mill stamped out stuff that basically fit the car. You didn't get a nice screwdriver like this. So my guess is that this Ford Motor Company's probably still looking for this screwdriver.
Can you say again, please, the name of that handle shape that you mentioned?
It's called a perfect handle.
Perfect.
Yeah. This one, I think is pretty neat, because this perfect handle screwdriver can be adjusted. You can take the handle, let me loosen up the wing nut here, fold it down like this, and this particular screwdriver was manufactured by one company only, and that was the H.D. Smith Company. How do I know that? It's printed right here on the inside. Okay, so can you imagine the amount of torque that you could get on this screwdriver, holding it like this and tightening down a screw with it, or breaking it loose? If you needed more torque, then you could do this and make it into a T-handle. Pretty clever ideas. One of the things that I've found over the years collecting tools is there is nothing new under the sun. A couple of hours ago when we were setting this up, I was telling one of the guys that was looking at that router, I said, yeah, I've got the base to another one of these routers at home, made by the same company. And the way it's set up is one side has a hinge on it, and the other side has an arc cast into it with a thumb screw on it, so that if you wanted to change the profile of the cutter, all you would need to do is just take this, loosen the thumb screw on it, tilt the motor up slightly, and you could change the complete profile of the cutter that you had in the router. I remember Rockwell coming out with that in the late 1990s, and it only came out, oh gosh, it was maybe just for a year or two that they had that, and then it disappeared again. So obviously the public didn't warm up to it. But see, nothing new under the sun, because I got one that's 100 years prior to that. That's what they did with it, is made it so it had a tilt base on it.
The folding wooden rulers,
Yeah.
Was there a purpose for how it's folded now?
Oh, no, I just did that to display it. Yeah, that's all. This one is not, not really impressive, but the neat thing about it is the fact that it says Stanley, and it's got a little heart below it with an SW on it, and then it says Victor, and then it has ZZ behind that, and that's what makes it cool, is that ZZ. Any guesses as to what the ZZ stands for? No, it's not ZZ Top. The ZZ stands for zigzag. Okay? The company that originally developed these folding interlocking rulers like this, they called it the zigzag. Stanley thought, hey, that's pretty cool. Hey, you know what? We're going to buy your company. So that's what they did. They bought it and then kept the ZZ and assigned one of their logos onto it, plus the name Victor, which was one of their previous companies that they bought. And that's how they would rebrand things. Stanley was basically the original corporate raider. They saw a tool or a product that was a good idea, or thought it was a good idea, they'd buy it. Okay? One of the things that Stanley did, and we'll get to the real elephant in the room is down there, but right here, I want to talk about this a little bit. This is a Stanley number 1. And it's out of the Stanley planes. This is probably, you want to say, probably the rarest one. It's certainly the cutest one. Does it have any purpose? You know, that's been talked over for years. And originally they thought, well, it was made for kids. And then they thought, well, no, not that, doesn't fit. Maybe it was made as a salesman's sample. Well, could be, you know, it'd fit nice in your pocket. Put it in your pocket like this, and when you go to close the sale, you know, you take that and set it out. Hey, you know, give us an order, you can have that. And thought about that and said, yeah, it's probably not that either. And why isn't it? Because this plane, basically, from the time it was introduced to the time they stopped production in 1943, they never, ever improved on this plane. All the other planes that Stanley made, they were always constantly making improvements. Why? Well, number one, you get customer feedback, and they said, you know what, if you'd put a lateral adjustment lever on this thing so I could get that blade square, that would be a help instead of me taking a hammer and banging the top of the blade around. Okay, we're on it. So they'd do something like that. Or they'd go, well, you know what, if you do this finish in nickel rather than just black Japanning, I kind of like that, it would hold up better. Well, okay, we'll think it over. And sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. This plane, let me see. Take this one, for example. I have to put this one down. Naturally, I picked up the heaviest one on the table. Right here, there's a lever behind a plane iron. That's your lateral adjustment lever. That didn't always come on a Stanley plane. The early ones don't have that. But at some point in time, Stanley decided we're going to make a mechanism where we can take that and adjust that plane iron just ever so slightly to square it up, or maybe just to drop an edge for a reason or two. And they put that adjustment lever on it. If you look at this number one, there is no lateral adjustment lever. Never has been, never will. This particular one is probably at the end of the run. Somewhere probably manufactured in the late 1930s, early 1940s. How can I tell that? Well, the iron that's in it says Stanley Made in USA. It doesn't have the Sweetheart label, and that's the one I pointed out on the ruler. It's got that little heart with an SW in it. And that SW was actually a tribute to one of the company presidents, William Hart. And Stanley had that trademark from, let's see, 1922 to 1935. So if you have a tool that has that heart printed on the blade with an little SW in it, and the SW stands for Stanley Works, you can pretty much date that tool between 1922 and 1935. There are some planes that cross over a little bit, and let me show you what I mean. One of the things that we like to do is collect tools that are what we call mint in box, okay? So that would be a tool that probably was never used or was used very sparingly and still has the original box for it. Now we'll take this one. And the reason I'll make that is to prove my point. The box for this plane, it's a number 4 with a corrugated sole on it. And if you look at the end of the box, you'll see a Stanley logo there with the heart and the SW. Got it? Okay. That's what it says on the outside of the box. Now, I know where this plane came from, so I know that this is the box that this plane's been in since 1930-something or other. And the plane itself does not have the Sweetheart logo on it. Well, how can that be? This has got an earlier logo than what's on the iron. Well, we could say, well, maybe the iron's been replaced. Did you look at the condition of this plane? Do you think that somebody would replace the iron on this? I don't think so. My guess is that Stanley just had a lot of boxes with the SW on it, and they're not going to send them to the burn pile. They're going to use them. So they put this plane, it matches it, okay, it's a number 4 with a corrugated sole. So why not use the box? Who cares? Most people throw the boxes away anyway. So you'll find a lot of that you go, doesn't quite match up. But then you think about it, and you think about, well, you know, if you were running a multi-million-dollar company, and not like today where people don't, you know, they care one way or the other how much money you spend. These guys were watching every penny. So they'd take a bunch of boxes or labels that, you know, were basically assigned to the dump and use them. Because how else are you going to make money if you don't use everything out? And that's the way I like to buy tools. It's like I said, the things that you see on display here are in pretty decent condition. And if you want to invest in tools, I guess that would be the way to do it. Having gone to gun shows and flea markets and estate sales and all of that, when you go to deal on a price for something, what's the first thing you're going to work on them for? Well, that's got a little scratch on it. Don't you think you could drop that 10 bucks? If you buy something new in a box, it's not going to get much better than perfect. And at that point, if I wanted to resell it, hey, it's new in the box, what can I tell you? Now that's the price it's going to be. So that's something to think about if you decide to, well, if you decide to collect anything. Condition is a big issue.
So that box also had the Bailey on it, and you're saying that was an earlier company that
Yes.
that Stanley bought
Yes.
somewhere along the line?
Yeah, Leonard Bailey, and there were, this is why I say it gets complicated, because Leonard Bailey was an independent plane maker. Stanley went in and bought his patents. And in 1875, and I'm not making that up, by the way, they got into a patent infringement squabble. And it went to court. Stanley won it. And Bailey went off on his own after that. But that's the reason that the Bailey name is on there. Some say that it was in tribute to the guy that ran their pattern shop, whose last name was also Bailey. Or it could be the other company they bought, which was a washing machine company, whose owner's name was Bailey. So things get a little bit murky here. When I say that you'll buy tools because of the way they look, here's a nice example. This is a level. Now, can you imagine the amount of work that went into this level to put this filigree all the way across the body of this level? Was it necessary? No, you could have gone with just a flat piece of metal across here, or maybe a couple of posts in here, or something like that. I can't imagine. Ed, do you think that this would be a little, just thinking about casting processes back then, I would say that that would probably be a difficult piece to cast and have it come out perfect every time.
Yes, because, when you sand cast, nothing comes out perfect. It's where the parting line is, flashing, okay, all that will be taken off after the fact, okay? So even though they cast that, there's probably some handwork went into finishing it, okay? Finishing it up, right?
Yeah, and I look at this and I see no flashing at all, anywhere. Yeah, it's been probably been hand filed off of it, if there was some. Plus the fact that you're building a precision tool here and you're casting it. It's a level, it's got to be right.
Yeah.
Top and bottom have been machined, but you look at it all the way down, it's not like this end is thicker than that end. I mean, it's the same dimension all the way along this. So the casting,
Make patterns, we used to work within 10 thousandths of an inch, if you would, to make patterns.
yeah,
So, and you add wrench, we call it shrink, you add expansion, because when you cast something, the metal shrinks, so you build an oversize. Anyways, the point is, you can get a fairly accurate piece of casting that has, plus it has, finish on it, but it machine it off, right? So you get
Right.
those.
yeah. And they did all of this work and sold these levels for $46 a dozen. 46 bucks for a dozen of these.
What year was that from?
This was in 1870s.
Oh, that's where woodpecker started.
Yeah. They don't sell anything for $48 a dozen. This is manufactured by the Davis Tool and Level Company. The company did not last long. I think that their total run was about 20 years, and that was it. And they made these levels in different sizes. I have one that's sits in our living room at home, and it's only 7 inches. And it's weird because it's the only one that they made that kind of came out even. They made a 12-inch level, but they made a 7 and a 28 and a 17, and it's like, I don't get it, but that's what they did. Because the company only lasted for 20 years, and because of the fact that this was probably the best level you could buy at the time, these have become very collectible. The neat thing about it, it also has a built-in inclinometer. So if you wanted to set something up on an angle, you could dial it in right here on the level. Take a good look at it afterwards before I put it away and you'll never see it again, because it's something that's really kind of neat. Let's talk, we're going to wrap this up real quick. I wanted to talk to you about the elephant in the room. Anybody that's picked this up already figures that they picked up an elephant. This is a only example that I've seen of one of the beginning routers. Obviously, weight was a factor here. I told one of the guys this morning, I said, if you were in a tornado, you just hide behind your router. Because there's nothing going to pick this thing up. It's got to be the heaviest thing in my tool collection, bar none. There's an interesting story behind the router and its origination, and I also have an interesting story about how I got this router. This particular router came from Hupperson Shop Lumber Company. Anybody know where that's at, or remember where it was at?
It's on Grossback.
Yes. just off of Groesbeck. It was actually on Cass Avenue.
What was the name of it?
Hubbard and Shop. They had a mill at this lumber, I mean, this was an old school lumber company. And the owner, Larry Schott, was like third or fourth generation. And he was on my advisory committee when I was teaching. And so I got to know Larry pretty well. At 99 years in company business, they decided to close up shop. And my guess was, being that the lumber company was located right along the railroad tracks there in Mount Clemens, just off of Groesbeck, somebody offered him a truckload of money for that property. So he decided, you know what, I'm done beating myself up every day, let's close the place up. So he did. And one of my vocational students who worked there at the mill was on his way out to lunch one day while they were cleaning out the mill shop. And the equipment that was in this mill shop all looked like it came out of Greenfield Village. And there was nothing new in there. Everything in there was from when they first started the place. And it all had line shafts all through the mill. And to start something up, you grab a belt, put it on there, take the brake off, and away you go. Well, in one section of the shop, they had a big work table, and it was set up to cut stair pockets in the stringers. And they used this router for that. Now, if you've picked this router up, you're thinking, God, I wouldn't want to mess with the guy that ran this router all day. Well, basically, he had a pretty easy job, because what happened was, this little eye that's cast in the top was connected to a piece of cable that ran up to the rafter on a pulley, and then down the other side, there was a counterweight. So you could go over there and actually lift this router up with your little finger. And they would take that, and it's set up the way it left the building. It's still got the template collar around the bit here. And on the way out, my former student walked by the dumpster and looked in there, and here sat this router. They just figured that, we're done with it. We're not going to get anything for it. Take it out to the dumpster. So he put it in his car and drove back to school. And he said, hey, Mr. Durand, I got something in a car that you might like. Because when I taught, I had a spot in the shop. It was in my office where I used to have a blackboard in there. And I had framed it all in barnwood and put up a bunch of these antique tools, just for the ambiance of the shop. And so he knew I liked antique tools. And to him, this was a true antique. So he brought it in, and I said, Don, I'd love to have that. He says, well, it's yours, because he said, otherwise it's going back. And he did is he went and got a pair of clippers that they use for shearing sheep. And he took the clipper end off of it. Now you had an armature there with a rod sticking out, so he fashioned a collet for it, put a cutter on it, and sent a couple of his guys to work, and within a day, they had all the rabbits back in these, set them back out. The company that had refused them goes, how did you do this so fast? He says, well, I just did this, and I took an electric clipper and I put a cutter on the end of it, and did. They said, that's really a good idea. And they said, you ought to market that. And he says, yeah, nah, not interested. Well, one of the guys that worked for him, whose name was Junius Yates, decided, you know what, that might be a pretty good idea. He says, boss, why don't we do that? We'll start a company and manufacture this. And he says, I don't know about that. He said, no, really, we could make some money off of this. So that's what they did. So it all started in a little machine shop, like most of these companies did. And they started manufacturing this cutter, and Stanley got wind of it, because somebody had gone over to them and said, hey, you ought to see what this guy's making over here. It's really pretty cool. So Stanley went in there and said, yeah, we'd like to have that. How much you want for the company? And a patent. So Carter sold the business, but one of his stipulations was that his name went on that router. So if you look at this one real close up here where the tag is, it says the R.L. Carter division of the Stanley Works. So I can pretty much date this router to somewhere between 1925 and 1930. That's, we were talking about horsepower. I have a printout of one of their catalogs, and they claim it's approximately 3 horse. One of the guys figured it's probably more like 2. But it takes a lot of horsepower just to lift this thing.
How many volts?
The other tool that I wanted to talk about, and this is what I mean, I look at the audience here, and I'm sure a lot of you can remember seeing hand saws like this. You don't see them like this anymore. This is a Porter cable, and that came from the company of R. Porter and G. Porter. I don't know what their first names are. And the third guy, his name was F. Cable. So that's where Porter Cable came from. Started in a garage in Syracuse, New York, with a $2,300 loan. And ended up to be a mammoth power tool company. However, I'm sad to say that what happens is you get successful, somebody wants to buy you and figures they can make it cheaper and make more money from it off the name, and that's exactly what happened to Porter Cable. And the last owner was Pentair. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they bought several big companies like that. Delta was another one they bought. And of course, we all know what happened to Delta and what happened to Porter Cable. Their business model didn't quite work out, building it cheaper and figuring they're going to make a lot of money off of the label. So this particular saw is it's a good example of what made Porter Cable the company that it was. It's a Model 528, which was one of their most popular saw. And believe it or not, this is the condition I found it in. It still has the sales tag on the end of the cord. It says TB Rail. Anybody remember TB Rail? They were on Jefferson. Remember that, Ed? No? God, maybe I'm old. Oh, one guy back there. Okay. TB Rail was a company like Charles Strellinger, and they sold industrial equipment. And this saw back in, best as I can figure from the paperwork that came with it, it was sold in 1957 at a cost of $135. Okay, and you could buy a car back in 1957 for about $2,500. So it was an expensive machine at the get-go back then. It was probably used once because the original printing is still on the blade. I went through and blew it out, and I blew out a lot of mahogany dust. So somebody had used to cut mahogany with it, and that's the last time they used it as best as I can figure. So there's things out there. There's a lot of things I haven't talked about, but it's getting on 3:45. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to have enough information to cover an hour. So, all of you get A's today, okay? And you get to go out on the smoking patio if you want to look the other way. So, I thank you very much. And if you have any questions, or you want to see something afterwards, why, we'll be here until, Jerry says, no, I gotta go home. I rode with you, remember? I gotta go home.
Well, they'll kick us out by 4:30-ish.
Okay.
So we'll be cleaning up then. But, go ahead, any questions?
What percentage of your tool collection does this represent?
Well, it's like Captain Smith said on the Titanic, it's only the tip of the iceberg.
What's this?
That, okay, one of the guys brought that in. Who brought that in?
Who brought it?
You know what it is?
Yes, it's a drill press for timber framing,
That's correct,
and it's, you can use it as a miter.
correct.
And that Speedomatic next to you, if you want to pick that one up, it's similar to one you have.
Yes,
Take a look at the guard,
Porter Cable.
yeah.
okay?
This has the famous banana guard on it.
Yeah, that's called, and the Porter Cable made the 508,
Yes,
and that, any carpenters in the shop here? No carpenter, can't believe it. But you'd be surprised how many carpenters lost their fingers on that saw, because they would use that for a handle. Eventually OSHA came into effect, they outlawed it, which is what they should have done to begin with. And there's only a guard on one side, because they would use it to cut the bottom plates out on door openings,
yeah,
and you could get real close. You can turn that saw on, pull the cord or shut it off, pick up a piece of 1x10 and cut it in half before that blade will stop. And it weighs about 10 pounds.
yeah.
It's super
Or
heavy.
if you want to, you can just shut it off, go have lunch, and by the time
Come
you get
back,
back,
it'll be
it'll
turned.
just slow down with it.
Steve,
That's what we started out with as carpenters.
how did you come by that saw?
Believe it or not, that particular saw, I was doing a side job, putting in a bathroom, and I had to go down in the basement to turn the water off, and it was in a box. And they wanted an extra done. I said, well, give me this box of stuff you have here, and I'll do the extra. And they just, oh, take it, take it. So there was a couple other things in there also. But the saw is worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
And
Treat
it
it
still
nice.
runs, by the way. So,
Yeah, treat it nice, because you'll never get another one like it.
no, I don't want another one.
Got any other questions?
So, one of our problems with having all these tools, do you have an exit plan?
Sort of. I told my kid, well, my oldest daughter, one day when we were talking about that, she says, there's gonna be one heck of a garage sale. And I said, well, Jenny, do what you like, but I'm telling you right now, between my tool collection and my military collection and other odds and ends I've picked up along the way, I said, you didn't buy this stuff, but you're gonna be the loser on it. She said, oh, I was just kidding you anyway, Dad. And I said, well, look it, I have 2 daughters and a son. I told them, I said, if you're smart, I said, you'll look into finding an auction house that specializes in this stuff and commit it to an auction. I said, you won't get full-blown retail or whatever, it's going for. Maybe less, I don't know. Because the prices on this stuff goes up and down. It's just like the stock market. But I said, hey, you didn't pay for it, so you get the benefit of it. And I've got 2 grandsons, but right now they're kind of interested in anything that does this.
I got a couple of those.
Yeah, if I had an antique cell phone collection, they'd probably. But, anybody else? Yes, sir.